So I wanted to do a quick run through of how to use the displacement map that I created and provided a link to earlier. And suffice it to say that displacement maps, normal maps, bump maps, texture maps, diffuse, that's way too much to explain here, and none of you guys probably really care anyway. So suffice it to say that a displacement map based on the colors, it changes the pixels around so it simulates depth in 3D. And we're going to try and create something like this. So the first thing we want to do is go to the web, to that link. And when you click on that link, this is a page you'll get. And you can mouse over any of the items and see what's in there. And this is the way Adobe set it up, not me. So no fussing about the UI. That's not my fault. Anyway, there are two displacement maps. And the only difference is this one is 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, and this one is 3,000 by 3,000. And you can use either one you want, depending on your image size. So to download it, all you need to do is click on one of them. It takes you to the next page, and you come over to the download button, and you want to download PSD. And it'll ask you where do you want to save it. You can save it wherever you want, just remember. And I'm going to hit cancel because I already have it downloaded. And now we're going to jump into Photoshop. So here's the image I'm going to use, and the first thing I want to do is make a selection of the part to be reflected. And usually you try and go with a horizon line or, somewhere around there depending on what you're trying to do. And this one is pretty obvious, it's right about here. So I'm going to hit M for the marquee tool, and then just click and drag a selection down to about yay far. That's close enough. I'm not going to be real precise, but you get the idea. Once you have your selection made, just hit Control J to duplicate. Next thing you want to do, and I'm going to try real hard not to use keyboard shortcuts I've set up, so I'm going to try and remember what the standard ones are, so bear with me if I don't. But you can hit Control T to transform, and then you want to right click and hit Flip Vertical, and then hit the Enter key to accept. Next thing you want to do is hit the V key to get the Move tool, or click on it, and then hold down the Shift key while you're dragging so that keeps it'll make it go straight, and then hold the Shift key down and then just drag down. And I have the guides turned on so I can see when it's lined up. I don't have to guess too much, and then I'm just going to let go. Now the next thing you want to do, I'm going to control click on that layer for a second. Well, first of all, let me rename it so these are a little easier to see what's going on. So that's a reflection, and this is a main image, and I can even spell main image maybe. And I'm going to control click on the reflection layer just to show you guys something. So you can see down here that there's a little more of the image sticking down. I'm going to hit Control D to deselect. Now you can either go to Image and Reveal All, and that will extend the canvas to show that. Or as I'm going to do, you can hit Control Alt to select what's visible, and then go to Image and Crop. And then Control D to deselect. And the reason I cropped it instead of revealing all is I wanted to keep it a square, just because I did. Next thing you want to do with the reflection layer selected, you want to come down and click on Add a Layer Mask. And then I'm going to hit G for the gradient tool. And you want to make sure that your gradient is going from white to black. I'm going to hit X because that'll just flip it. And if you had different colors, you can always go up and just change it. But you want your gradient to be white to black. And then with the layer mask selected, click, and I'm going to hold down Shift again because I like to keep it straight, and just drag down. And now we have a layer mask on there. The next thing we want to do, I'm going to Control click on the reflection image thumbnail again to make a selection. I'm going to come down, click, and I'm going to add a solid color adjustment layer. Now because it's an adjustment layer, you don't have to get the color right the first time, but I'm just going to grab something from the sky just to get us started. And now we have that layer. I'm going to rename it to water. You don't have to. And I'll drag it below the reflection. So we have the reflection layer, the water layer, and then the main image layer. Next thing we want to do is go back to the reflection layer and control click on the image thumbnail. Make sure you get the image thumbnail and not the layer mask. Then we want to come up right next where it says lock. You want to click on that checkerboard so that locks the transparent pixels. because the next thing we're going to do is apply a blur filter. And if we blur it too much, it'll tend to go outside the lines and it'll mess up your image, and you don't want that. So just trust me and do that. Then we're going to go up to Filter, Blur, and Motion Blur. And these settings are going to be to taste or whatever you want, but I'm going to go with 90 degrees, so it's straight up and down, and distance of 35, and I'll say OK. If you don't think that's enough, you can always apply it again. And a quick way to do that is hit Control F, because that will apply the last filter selected. I'll even do it 3 times. Now I should warn you, in CC 2017, they changed the keyboard shortcut of Control F that forever and a day has been apply last filter. They changed it to search. And I think that's kind of silly personally, because I can just as easily come up here and click here for search, and I use apply last filter way more often than I use the search functionality. So to fix that, you could just go in and remap your keyboard shortcuts to something you like. So I just want to mention that, because if you're in 2017, like I said, if you could hit Control F, you're going to get the search feature and not the apply last filter. If you don't want to change your keyboard shortcuts, you could just go to Filter, Blur, and Motion Blur and click through and do it again. Either way works. Next thing I'm going to do is go up to Filter, Distort, and Displace. Now again, these numbers are going to be whatever you want them to be, depending on how many ripples you want, or how deep, and all that jazz, and the size of your image. So these numbers could change, and they probably will. They will, especially if you use the 1000 by 1000 one. But again, it's just something to play with. The only really important thing to remember is that you want your horizontal scale to be about 50% of the vertical, or a little less. So right now I have 150 and 325. And again, those numbers may not work. You may want to take them higher or lower, but just play with them. The other thing you want is stretch to fit and repeat edge pixels, and then say OK. And now it's going to ask you to choose your displacement map, and you just want to navigate to wherever you save that file. And I have it on the desktop, so it's right there. Now you could click on the file once to select it, and then click on the Open button, or you could just double click on the file name itself and it applies it. I'm going to hit Control D to deselect and uncheck Lock Transparent Pixels, and now we can see the reflection. One thing I probably want to do, because those edges are a little harsh, I'm going to hold down the Z key and then use the left mouse button to zoom in. You can see it's kind of harsh, and we don't want that. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the reflection layer and click on the layer mask thumbnail to select it. I'm going to hit B for the brush tool and just grab a soft round brush. Make sure you're painting with black. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key so I do this straight. And I'm just going to sweep across there. And that cleans up that edge, but now you're seeing the blue from underneath. So I would just click on the layer mask thumbnail for the water, and then just do the same thing. And you can zoom in on both and clean them up and tweak them a little bit, but I think you get the basic idea. You just want to clean that edge up just a little bit. And next thing you might want to do is, if you don't like the watercolor, if it doesn't seem what's the right color, you can just double click on the thumbnail and you can choose another color from from the image or the water, or you can come over and play with it and do whatever you want. Say you want it a little darker. The only other thing you might want to do is, depending on your images, the reflection might be a little too strong. So if you click on the layer mask thumbnail on the reflection layer and hit Control L to get a levels adjustment, you want to come down to the output levels and you want to drop the white a little bit. If I drop it a lot, you'll see what's happening. It's taking all the... So you don't have to do it much, but sometimes if your images seem too shiny, you can drop it a little bit. And then just hit OK. And there you go. Once you get that part done, you can add textures or other adjustment layers or color lookup tables or whatever you want to do, and then you have your image. Of course, you will definitely want to play with that edge a little more than I did and keep it clean, but you get the basic idea. So I hope that helps everybody, and if not, let me know.